I'm extremely honored to just welcome our next just talk and moment, Mr. Shomari Wills. This is really exciting. So
Hey,
excited.
how's it going? Happy
So,
Juneteenth.
yes, happy Juneteenth. We are free and we're trying to get a little more free after this talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Shamari, for joining us. I was so thrilled that, just to see how responsive you are to my email. I had just reached out. I've been listening to your book. I've seen so many of your talks on the Rock Newman show at JP Morgan. And I love history. One of the folks who really inspired me is Juliet K. Walker. She has done a lot of history when it comes to Black business in America. And so when I found out about your book, I'm like, we have to learn what the history of this looks like because
Right.
that's where inspiration comes from. So thanks for taking the time to be here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And, I was glad I was able to make it today. There's a lot going on, but I was glad
Yeah.
we were able to connect.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, folks know that you are the author of the book Black Fortunes. And I'd love for you to just quickly introduce yourself a bit more, who you are, where you're from, DC. I went to Howard, so I'm going to just shout that out real quick.
Okay.
and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, so I'm Shomari Wills. I'm from DC, grew up in DC. Went to Morehouse, another HBCU.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm a journalist and an author. Majority of my journalistic background is in television production, and I've done some writing as well. And I kind of came upon this concept several years ago when I was actually working as a newspaper reporter for a Caribbean newspaper in New York City. I went to Jamaica, and there's this place in Jamaica in Kingston called Devon House. And they're actually known for their ice cream. Everybody's like, you got to go to Devon House. They have amazing ice cream. And, I can't tell you how the ice cream was. I never tried it because when I got there, I got distracted. So the ice cream shop is part of this complex. And there's a massive, just magnificent Victorian mansion there. So I just said, I gotta have to go check out this mansion. What is this? And so it belonged to the guy that was the first Black millionaire in Jamaica.
Wow.
And so I went it wasn't open, but I got somebody to give me a tour of the house. And, it was just absolutely amazing. I found out about this guy's history. He was a carpenter on a ship. He's a Black man. And the ship was sailing off the coast of Venezuela. Hit some choppy waters, hurricane, I think, and the ship wrecked. And unfortunately, he was a very strong swimmer. He swam to the shore, washed up on the beach,
Wow.
and started wandering around, and he found an abandoned gold mine. So he makes his way back to Jamaica and eventually kind of gets the money and the team together to go back and mine this gold mine. And so he literally found the gold mine. And, he just became very wealthy as a product of discovering that and invested in different things. He's the richest Black man in Jamaica, the first Black millionaire in Jamaica.
And what year is this?
And what's that?
What year is this? Like time?
What year? I believe this is 1862.
Mm.
Don't quote me on that, but I'll get back to you with the exact date. But he ended up building the mansion that I was actually standing in that was next to the ice cream shop. And it's just this beautiful Victorian mansion with these beautiful columns and these palm trees outside. It has like a million rooms and secret rooms and a ballroom and a library. And so he had this mansion, and at the time, Jamaica was still a British colony. And, they still are under the crown of England. Right. And so the British royals, they just couldn't stand the fact that this Black guy had all this money. And his house was by one of the main roads you had to take to go to the pier to leave. And so they would have to take their carriages by his house. And they just irked them so much that they made them construct a road that went around his house because they didn't want to have to ride by his house. And so I was originally going to write the book on him, but, I live in America and, I would have loved to move to Jamaica for a couple months to do the research. But that wasn't really plausible. So I started looking at, well, what is the history of similar folks over here? And, I sort of found a historical gold mine, so to speak, and, kind of learning about the stories of the first Black millionaires in the United States and put together the book, while I was working as a journalist. I was at CNN and then later Good Morning America while I was working on this. So yeah, that's sort of my story, my spiel.
Come on, I love it. It was just a search, and I like to I like to see all types of things as they go from idea to life, right? It's just that search, that active curiosity. I think we find that with any type of creator, whether you're creating a written piece of work or a physical product. So just for everybody watching, that's something to key in on. So my question for you, I mean, it's twofold, right? So you talked about just what compels you to write the book, but then when we look at the book, um these millionaires were former slaves who endured incredible, right? Like, I mean, we're going through a lot right now, but it's so hard to even put my mindset in that deep place of just torture and horror. But they endured incredible amounts of suffering, but they were able to still amass wealth. And this is pre-slavery, right? And for many of them, and they were self-made made entrepreneurs whose unknown success mirrored that of the J.D. Rockefellers, of the Henry Fords, of the Thomas Edisons. And so, from your research, what did you see as some of the underlying traits when it came to these African Americans and their ability to thrive under so much just these circumstances?
Well, I think the first person that comes to mind is Robert Reed Church, because he made his money actually during a pandemic.
Wow.
Or some of his money, and during a massive racial uprising. I mean, he was in a massive racial uprising his entire life as a black man with all this money in the South. But basically, he's a former slave. He was actually worked on a ship that shipped cotton up and down the Mississippi that, of course, slaves were forced to pick. So, I mean, I'm sure that irony was not lost on him. He escaped slavery during the Civil War. He jumped off the ship and, swam to freedom. And, I guess being a strong swimmer, that might be a good, that's the one trait they seem to all have. But he swam to freedom and he washed up on the coast of Memphis, and he was able to sort of build a life there. But he, was always in, kind of Tennessee is where the KKK was founded. So he was in an extremely racist environment, extremely anti-black environment. And so he was always kind of in the crosshairs. He was shot during the Memphis race riots in 1866. It was just this horrible race riot. It actually involved policing, if you can believe it.
I can believe it.
I mean, basically what happened is that you had this period we all know called Reconstruction, which is basically when black people, sort of were being helped or receiving the proper amount of help, I would say, right after slavery. And part of that was that the Union Army was left in the southern states to protect black folks. And in places like Memphis, there were two law enforcement bodies. So you had the Union, which was part black, in some places like Memphis, there were a lot of black people in the Union Army. And then you had the police officers, and the police force was usually white. And so you had this clash between these two forces. If you can believe it, there was one instance in Memphis where a police officer brutalized a black person. And the Union troops, a group of Union troops, went and found this police officer and beat him up.
Wow.
And, it's just, it was kind of, if you can imagine in the 1860s, something like that happening. And so the police force was very anti-black in Memphis, and they hated the Union troops. So they ended up getting into a pretty serious fight at a bar in Memphis one time. And, they just kind of used this fight as an excuse to go on this rampage to the black community, did horrible things to black women, burned people's houses down, killed people. And in the middle of this race riot, they were looking for Bob Church because he wasn't quite a millionaire yet, but he had this successful billiard hall. He was probably the most well-known black person in Memphis because he had kind of sued the city for the right to get a business license because they didn't want to give a black man a business license back then. So he was already in their crosshairs. Group of police officers come.
Uh-oh. We got a little pause, y'all. To be continued. So this is just what happens when you're walking through the beauty of technology, but we're just going to work with that. And we're just going to say that part 2 of that interview is going to come back in a few minutes. But as we wait, you guys, I want to do another giveaway. So talk to me. We've given away some shirts, right? We have yet to give away the $50 gift card. So Ronald Atkinson, Abby, if you can make sure to write that down for me, Ronald Atkinson, he got his shirt. So you got to let us know, Ronald, what's your shirt size, all of that. And then next up, we want to get someone a $50 gift card. All right. And so I want to know, are there any students in the building? Do not be shy. Speak up. Let me know, because we will get you something beautiful in the form of a gift card. All right. And also, a few more things happening the rest of today is we're going to go into our session on just what does it look like to build Black wealth from a college student's perspective? How do students right now, current students, how are they navigating this process? What are the best ways that you can kind of take steps to navigate this process? All right. And so before we do that, I wanted to just talk to my man, Rob, see if he can lift us up with another small tune real quick, since we were just suddenly cut off. So before we dive into either part 2 of Shomari's talk and or the next conversation around wealth and the Black student, I'm gonna bring Rob up one more time. Actually, this isn't the one more time, but he's gonna sing another song, not a new song, but another song. So come through, Rob LeRae. Keep on. Let's do it. Who's ready to hear from Rob LeRae? Holla at me. All right, let's go, guys.
All right, so this next song, I need y'all to stand up right now in your home, because we're about to have a little bit of party. We're gonna do a little bit of this song, just a little bit. But the name of this song is called Keep On, because one thing we know how to do as Black people is keep on. Yes. And that's what we're about to do. Let's do it. Hey. Big city boy in my bloodline, old country roads in the good time. One more thing staying on my mind, it's only a matter of time. Headache, backache, and toothache, I guess life really is give and take. Won't let nothing slow up my pace. If I slip or fall, I know I gotta keep on, yeah. I gotta keep on, yeah. I gotta keep on. Shot yourself with no bell, falsely accused with no details. Mothers in the church and just with the well. Wait a minute. Now let me make one thing clear. I wasn't given spirit of fear. Even if I had to kick down a wall, I'ma find some joy in it all if I keep on, yeah. I gotta keep on, keep on. I gotta, hey, yeah. Keep on, yeah. Listen, I'm from a small town where we call the trunk of a car a boot, and fireflies like them bugs. One thing that I am for certain of is that when life knocks you down, you get up, adjust your collar, and you keep on. Hey, everybody say keep on. You gotta say, keep on. You gotta say, keep on. You gotta, keep on. Hey, my brother keep on, my sister keep on, yeah. My uncle keep on, my auntie keep on, yeah. Whatever you gotta do, you gotta keep. Hey, we gotta keep on, yeah. Hey, now just clap where you are. If you're at home, this is the part where we can dance a little bit. Come on now. Keep on. We gotta keep on. Hey, we gotta keep on. You gotta listen. Put one foot in front of the other now. Put one foot in front Put one foot in front of the other now. Hey, keep on. Put one foot in front of the other now. Put one foot in front of the other now. Put one foot in front of the other now. Everybody just hey, we gotta keep on, keep on. We gotta keep on, keep on, keep it. Hey, keep on, keep it. Keep on, keep it. Everybody say keep on. Yeah. Gotta keep on.
Woo! I love it. Love it, Rob LeRae. All right, y'all, part two. Part two, Shomari.
Sorry,
Right.
sorry
No
about
problem.
that.
No problem, it happens. So we have a few minutes to finish, but you left out at like, it was a climax of the story.
I did it on purpose. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, this is a horrible race riot going on, and Robert Reed Church, he's the most prominent Black man in Memphis. He has this big, billiard hall, and so this group of police officers comes there. They rob his place, they raid and loot his place, and they shot him twice in the head, and he actually survived. They never fully got one of the bullets out of his head, so he had these horrible headaches his entire life. But so he survived, and in the aftermath of this is one of the worst race riots in the history of the United States, especially in terms of casualties. So many people died, and just they burned the Black churches, the Black schools. It's terrible.
Wow.
But he rebuilt, and a lot of people left Memphis after that, Black, white. And so he actually bought up a lot of the property. And so then actually there was a pandemic in Memphis in the 1870s. This time it was yellow fever. And it's just one of the worst yellow fever outbreaks in the history of the United States. People were getting sick left and right. And so of course people were leaving the city, and he came in and he bought up a lot of the property, especially from, some of the white folks who were leaving. A lot of the Black folks did not have the means to leave. And, so at the end of these two horrible events, he's sitting with this massive real estate portfolio. He's actually the largest scale landowner in all of Memphis, Black or white.
Wow.
And so he turns this into a cash flow vehicle for himself, of course, but he also developed some of the real estate, or a lot of the real estate, into housing for African Americans. So he was he built Bill Street that way in Memphis. A lot of people who've been to Memphis know Bill Street. He built that up by with apartments there he had for African Americans, and these were a lot of times for like working class people, but he would just really do them up and make them really nice and fancy because he thought that's what his people deserved. And then he leased out commercial properties. So you had Black businesses there, you had nightclubs, all that sort of stuff. And we all know that the blues, so to speak, was born on Beale Street because of the nightclubs. Folks used to come in and play there. So, he kind of, look for opportunity, even in really, really bad situations, to come in and not only do something for himself, but to also do something, for his community. The wealth that he was able to generate, he used it, in every way thinkable to help African Americans in our struggle. And one of the most famous things is everybody knows about Booker T. Washington going to the White House,
right? And
how controversial that was at the time, if you can believe it. One of the reasons Booker T. Washington got to go to the White House is because Robert Reed Church was a big donor to the Republican Party, which is like the Democratic Party now. They kind of switched. But he was a big donor to the Republican Party and to Theodore Roosevelt. I might have said FDR earlier. I meant Theodore Roosevelt. He was a big donor to Roosevelt and to the Republican Party. And so he was able to influence and help Booker T. Washington get that meeting at the White House. So just everything he had, he had a good life for sure, but he used it to try to help his community.
I love that, Shomari. I love that, because that is the way we define wealth at Student Dream. It's keeping more than you spend, but with joy, integrity, and generosity. And so when I look about those leaders, you know, you answered the question I was going to ask you next, which is, you know, what can we learn from them? And it's not just to think about yourself, but even as individualistic as America is, we're a community, you know? And so I love that. I love that. Well, and I guess just as we close, you know, not just, we're so grateful for you being here, Shomari, but we want to serve our community, right? And serve you. And so you have some cool new projects, you know, taking place. Can you share a bit about those and how the Student Dream community can support?
Yeah, I mean, right now, you know, it's just Black Fortunes is still out. It's still, you know, doing well. It's in paperback now. Unfortunately, the hardcover sold out. I get folks asking me where they can get one. I only have one or two myself. But it's in paperback. And then I have a new book that I'm working on, which is kind of looking forward at the future of Black wealth. But I don't have a release date for that, so I'm not sure when folks will be able to buy that. And then I'm working on a television series based on this book, which should be out in the next couple of years. So
that's beautiful.
That's what I'm working on.
Nice. Well, we are, one of our next giveaways, Shomari, was one of the copies of your book that we actually do have hold of. So
great.
Yeah, so shout out to Daquan. Daquan, you just won a copy of the Black Fortunes book. This will be your summer reading. So make sure you email us or drop your email in the bottom so we can get you your copy of Black Fortunes. And Shomari, thank you, man. Thank you so much for just sharing stories, right? It's like, that's what communities do. We share
Absolutely
where we came from, and we know that our story doesn't start with slavery, you know, and our story doesn't end on the ground. So
true. Very
thank you so much, Shomari. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy
And we'll
Juneteenth.
be in touch.
Absolutely. And have me back anytime. It was a real blast.
Yes, we sure will. All right. Have fun with your family.